So hello again, everyone. So we're moving to the interview. Very, very excited to have you, Nicole, today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
So, Nicole, your name is brilliant because I can say it the right way. Nicole Brûlé-Walker, with a hint of French.
Merci.
Brûlé with an accent is also important. You're a health and well-being strategist. And I'm really fascinated about what you do. So I'm really excited to hear if you'd like to introduce you exactly as you wish.
Okay.
It's completely free, and to tell us a little bit more about you.
Thank you very much. So health and wellbeing strategist is a phrase of my own coining, simply because I think in health there have been a lot of avenues for people to look at, chasing symptoms. There's all kinds of strategies out there, but how do you know which one is the right one? So my training started off, I worked professionally in sport, worked internationally for a long time in rugby and loved every minute of that. But when I moved to the UK from Canada, the people that really fascinated me were the ones that came in and said, I have this ache or pain and I don't really know why it's there.
Yeah.
And so me being totally curious about everything, had to find the why, and I still do that today. So I looked at human movement. I studied more about the patterns of movement and how patterns start to produce strain in our bodies if we don't recognize them. And so most of my work is really on a par. I think in therapy sometimes there can be a bit of a pedestal where people feel they're beneath the therapist. And so I wanted a phrase that actually opened things up and allows me to work on strategy about people's health and well-being with them rather than for them.
So it's really like a collaboration.
Absolutely, because every person, even if they came in with the same symptoms, you could take 10 people who had exactly the same pain in the same area or the same complaints. It's about connecting all of the smaller symptoms and seeing the bigger picture and seeing what's happening within the body and how integrated that is with your mindset and with your emotions and your nervous system and how your body actually moves.
What has been your personal experience with your body and your movement, and how has that influenced your path?
Well, I always feel really grounded with movement, and I think it's a really good way to take you out of your head, because we all have that internal voice that speaks to us when we least expect it and we least want it.
Oh yeah.
And I always have enjoyed movement for that reason, that coming into your body allows you that time and that space to actually just leave all that behind and leave that voice and actually retrain your brain and your body to live without it.
Beautiful. Great. So it's been your own journey as well as a lot of other people's journeys, and it really strikes me how individualized then that process is.
Yeah, I mean, I think so many people end up coming to me and they've been told there's nothing more anyone can do for them. They have results that don't show up on scans and x-rays, and so they're kind of left adrift, and wondering what's wrong with them. And really my point of view is there's nothing wrong with you. It's the person who sat opposite you and told you that there was nothing more they could do for you. There's always hope, there's always progress, there's always change that can happen internally in ourselves that makes a real difference.
Amazing. Could you give us some examples of sort of what issues people will come up to work with you? And I'm guessing it's very different, but it would be helpful, I think, to have some examples.
I think the one example that has always really stood out for me, I had a lady during COVID when, of course, you couldn't see people hands-on, which I'd done for 20 years at that point. And I mean, the minute we went into lockdown, I cried for 2 days. I just thought, how do I work when I can't be in the room with somebody? And I started thinking about it, and I thought, well, if I take out certain elements, but I allow other things to expand, then that gives me the option to work with people. So I started working with this lady, and she'd had 2 years of serious hip pain. She was told by everybody, top physios, top consultants, she'd seen everyone. And they all said the same thing, and she was due to have surgery, but didn't want it. She felt the surgery was a step towards feeling older in herself, and she'd already had 2 years of really being reduced in what she could do in terms of the quality of living. So she couldn't look after her grandchildren, she couldn't go on the long walks that she used to do, and she was pretty fed up. So I think people kind of hit me when they're thinking there must be something else out there, because the way I work is really different. So literally in 4 sessions, she was pain-free. Within 12 weeks, I was finished working with her. And it came down to the idea that the hip was actually compensating for an older ankle injury that had very subtle movement changes in it. And so when we worked on the ankle and restored the movement there, the hip became less painful. And then we gradually worked on some of the alignment issues around that from a muscular and bone structure point of view, and worked on the mindset side of it and the emotion about being injured for that period of time. And so now I always get pictures flooding in on Facebook of her, wherever she is in the world, having walked these incredible journeys and doing these amazing things. And, you know, the look on her face just says it all. She's happy.
Amazing. And so that all happened online?
All happened online. We literally, as we came out of lockdown, I think the in-between bit, I saw her once at the very end, just because we wanted to meet one another. And I sent her away with some work that she could continue with without me knowing that I was there if she needed me. So I learned a lot, and she learned a lot. And I think that's the way every healing journey should go. We should both learn from it. It's not just about me doing something to somebody to get them better.
So that must have been a big shift for you, realizing that I can actually do that. Not even physically present. That doesn't stop me from being helpful and having that collaborative work.
Having said that, I have retreated back into being in the room with people, because I do think there's a different energy. But it was interesting when you're looking at from a movement perspective, and you're seeing patterns of movement that are emerging in somebody that are older things, and they're so subtle that people don't notice that they're even doing it anymore, because they've normalized that way of being. And so when you see the pattern, when I was looking over Zoom, you know, you've got this natural frame around the person. And actually I found things were jumping out at me immediately. I could see things that I wasn't seeing when I was in the room with them the same way. So then that improved my skills when I came back to being in the room.
So that's given you actually more tools.
Yes, it was an interesting journey.
Excellent. What would you say is the connection, the sort of mindset, the deeper reasons of why you do what you do, maybe why you do it the way you do it?
I think personally, I just have a huge curiosity. I'm an avid learner. I'm always training. I'm always doing something. So at the moment, I'm doing some trauma-informed training, because it was an area that I felt really impacted on people's physical health, but yet I didn't understand it as much as I would like to. So I'm doing that, and I'm doing a level 3 counseling, because I do think that there are always better ways to ask questions. And when you ask better questions, you get better answers, and it helps people find the source of what's bothering them. And so it's just important to me to continue learning all the time. And I learn with every client I work with. I learn with every course I take, and it just completely evolves the way I am and the way I work.
So just going back on what you touched on, the connection with trauma and a potential, is it a physical injury or a condition?
So trauma, it's an interesting thing. And I came to it really from a personal place, because we'd had a house move that we hadn't expected. We were living somewhere for 16 years, and suddenly the landlord wanted the property back. And we put a lot of our own energy into this place, and we thought we were going to be there forever. And so in the 3 months after that, I became really sick. And so I thought, I don't really know where to go with this. I'm going to go to my doctor, because I need to do blood work at the very least and sort of see where things are at. And my cancer markers were 185, and they should have been around 35 or 36. But something in me was just saying, you know, I really feel that this is not cancer. I don't feel that I should be going down this pathway. I followed the 2-week pathway, and they kept testing and testing and testing, because they just didn't find anything. And I think in my heart, I knew it was stress because of the event that had happened. And so I think that from a perspective, most people think of trauma as being one big thing that happens. And yes, we did have one big thing, but it'd probably been years of me kind of ignoring and working too hard and pushing and not really listening to my body and resting as much as I should, because when I'm working with a client, I'm all about that person. And and I never switch off. I'm always thinking, what can we do next, and where do we need to what needs to happen to get this person better? And it just consumes me.
Have you worked on that balance now? Have you managed to
Yeah.
change things around?
Yeah, it's a little bit, when you're in that environment, you're so focused on what everybody else needs
Yes.
and you don't think about yourself. And now I
Yeah.
sort of have better boundaries. I
Yes.
was definitely a person who always said yes to everything. And now I say no when I need to.
Yeah. Yeah, very interesting. Yes. And it's interesting how an event, and you were talking about moving, and recently I've seen that actually it can be one of the strongest experiences in life. Major events in life, having a baby, getting married, and moving can be one of them too. And I think we're not necessarily aware as well of it could be this or it could be something else. An impact it has. It can be an accumulation of different things, but it really brings us back to sort of that awareness, being as aware as we can on what's going on within us. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's really one of the things that I would say was my big learning curve was actually learning to be more present and be more aware. Certainly from a business perspective, that's where your inspiration and your truth comes from, and your focus and everything comes from that. And I think so many people, particularly when you get to a certain age, everyone says time goes faster.
Yes.
And it doesn't go faster because we're getting older, and it just is that we've learned so many things and nothing's new to us anymore. And from a neuroscience point of view, we need to actually engage ourselves in new things and slow down and actually be present, and that makes time stop. And so we need to stop and enjoy those moments.
We do, absolutely. In terms of mindset breakthroughs, have you got any examples, anything that particularly impacted you?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest one was, obviously the few life events that had happened that brought me to doing the work that I do now and wanting to learn more about the trauma side of things is recognize stress in yourself, because I think people notice when they're at a heightened stress and when something really frantic is going on, but they don't see the smaller things like the lack of sleep and waking up with a puffy face and all of the physical things that happen and all the characteristics we take on. Somebody might behaviorally exhibit signs of stress by shaking their leg or using their hands when they talk, like I do. But it's I think it's really about seeing all of the symptoms and understanding that your body needs something. It needs a solution to come out of that stress. And recognize it and do something about it before it becomes something else, because stress actually is a catalyst for our major disease processes. So our cancers, diabetes, cardiovascular, we just need to pay attention to it. As women, we need to do more about it because we're always multitasking.
We are.
And so I think the other thing I would say would be, for me, because I was always a bit of a perfectionist with my work and I wanted everything to be exactly right, is to not wait. Don't wait. Put things out there. There are people who want to see what you have to put out there. They want to hear what you have to say. And the person you come back to that work as later on is a different person, because every day we change, every day we learn something new. And it's more important that it's out there in whatever form it needs to take. And you can refine, you can revamp, you can relaunch, you can do what you need to do, but get out there.
Very important. Yeah, it's actually the only way to get into that improvement journey. If we don't start at some point, then we're really sure that we're never going to get to those higher levels. But there's this side of us wanting to have it perfect or excellent straight away, isn't it?
Yeah, and that fear of putting something out there, and what if it's rejected? What if people don't see it? And I do think there's a time for everything and there's a place for everything, and sometimes it's about withdrawing and actually thinking about what else do I need to say, how can I make this better? And the version you put out a month later, 6 months later, 2 years later will be the right time and the right place, and it will just go because it's meant to be heard at that time.
Absolutely, yeah. And that doesn't mean that what you had to say initially was not valuable, etc. It just is the right time and the right place.
It's all about timing, really. And I think sometimes we don't realize we're not ready in ourselves for it to be out there, and that's where that inner work really comes back. We need to look after ourselves, we need to be more aware, and we need to sort of bring ourselves into a place where our mindset and our emotions and our physical body is all in the same place, striving for the same thing.
Yeah. What I love also about your story and your way of working is you have embraced how different it is, and you're able to articulate that. You're able to own it. It's coming from a very
It's taken a while.
stable place. But my experience is that it's actually everyone has got to do that whenever they're doing, particularly in your own business, because even if it's something that might be more I'm thinking, for example, of graphic design or things like that. Even if it's graphic design and it's not necessarily a new way of healing, it is unique to you, and there's no other person doing that this way. But that requires a lot of that awareness that we've been talking about, a lot of that inner journey that you just mentioned, that clarity, that refining my message, my approach, and owning it. Because I think initially we might not be super confident when we start off, but really building that confidence over time. And I really see how you've done that, because I feel, and is that your experience when you talk to other people? Is it something quite unique? Is there not a lot of other health and well-being strategies out there? Have you met others?
No, not really. Not really in the way that I've combined the work that I've done over sort of 25 years. And it's it's a difficult one. I mean, I spent years sort of beating myself up for not doing things in a more traditional way, because the course that I originally studied, it was intended to be a sports physiotherapy program. And then the physiotherapist sort of said, we don't want you to call yourselves physiotherapists because you're not doing our program at X, Y, and Z institution. And so the program I studied, because it was unique, they took only the top 10% of the people who applied, and it was incredibly rigorous. And the curriculum consisted of all the same components, yet there was one person who sort of said, no, you're not allowed to call yourself that. So suddenly, instead of being a sports physiotherapist, you became an athletic therapist, which was totally different. There was a different hierarchy to it. And so then I found that almost every training I did from that point onwards, I always went for, I didn't worry about the qualification. I worried about who I was doing the training with, and that mattered more to me. And so I think there's a lot of pieces of what I do that people don't recognize. So collectively, I hope that one day it will all come together.
Amazing. Very interesting, isn't it? Like the sort of the labels, you had to have a lot of work within yourself to be able to explain to people without using maybe certain labels, but also finding out your place, no, finding where you stand within the landscape of healing and movement, and so that's really, really inspiring.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's a journey that's still going on, and it will never stop, really.
Of course. That's why we like it as well. No?
Yeah.
It's always more. So before we finish, would you like to share about anything that you've got that sort of is new that you want to talk about?
Well, I've got two things. I've aligned with South Tees Wellbeing, and I'm doing a workshop on the 12th, which is Saturday, 10 till 12, and I'm doing a workshop on moving from anxiety to joy. So it is a more sort of somatic approach in working through anxiety and emotions and stress, and trying to find strategies, help people find simple strategies that help them move into a state of feeling happy and joyful in themselves, and that they can transmit that through how they move. That is a free workshop, and that is at grade 8 in WI, and 10 till 12 on that Saturday the 12th. So if anybody would like to join, you have to go to the South Tees workshop. As soon as they have a link, I'll be posting it on my socials. And then speaking of socials, I'm working on a YouTube channel. So that will imminently be out there with strategies for people to help themselves.
Excellent. Great. So there'll be all the details below the videos, and we can talk to Nicole about today to get all the links. Thank you so much, Nicole.
Oh, thank you. No, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.